Hello there, friends, and welcome into a Water Break Wednesday presented by Crown Royal. I'm Drew Dougherty, and that's Deepi Sidhu. Deepi, how you doing today?
I'm great, Drew. How are you?
Super duper, and we're taking questions from fans, whether they're on YouTube, Twitter, wherever. We want to hear from you. Please send them in. And when you send those questions in, let us know where you're sending them from or from where you're sending them. I'll get that right. My English teachers of the past are all shuddering that I said it that way. But yeah, we want to know where you're
ending with a preposition.
Yeah, I know I'm better than that. I apologize, but we want to know where these questions are sent from, and let's just get going, Deepi. It's been a fun week.
You just did it again, but okay.
Yeah, I just did it again. I know. Texans win, and it's always fun when you win. But there was a different way and different feeling about this one because it felt a long time ago when things were a little bit more carefree. Things were a little bit more fun, and Romeo Crennel is clearly somebody who's got skins on the wall, so to speak, but he's somebody that can have a good time, and I think that's rubbed off a little bit on the players, right?
I mean, Romeo Crennel's personality, you couldn't go any more different than Bill O'Brien's personality. Obviously, everyone's got their own coaching style. Romeo's is no different, but I think just being the situation of what it is, Romeo's been a head coach, he's been an interim head coach. You know, when you come into a situation where a team is 0-4, I mean, you can't just come in like guns a-blazing anyway. You sort of have to get the locker room, you got to rally the troops. You got to get the optimism going again. Guys are playing tight. You want them to loosen up and have some fun. So I think he was like the perfect balm for this 0-4 team that started the season. That he is, I think, exactly what they needed to sort of freshen things up, to get a spark. He had them laughing in the team meetings again. Whether it was intentional or unintentional, some of the players aren't quite sure because Romeo's just sort of funny in his own way. But to see a 73-year-old head coach, the oldest now to ever win an NFL game, come into the locker room dancing, I think the players were really caught off guard, but pleasantly surprised. And I think they remembered now. First of all, you forget what it's like to win when you lose first 4 straight. I almost had forgotten like what that winning feeling was like. And then to have a coach that just lets you enjoy it. You know, you're not worried about next week or the previous week or what happened 2 weeks before. You're just worried about the win. You're going to enjoy it, then put it behind you and get to work for Tennessee. And I think in that sense, Romeo is just perfect. He knows his team. He knows the personnel. He knows his defense. He says he's seen what this team can do when things are going well, when it comes to stopping the run. And they just needed to get back to it. I think he gave them that confidence that they needed.
Yeah, fan on Dear Drew asked, what's it like covering a team during a coaching change? And I thought, well, I've only been here for the Kubiak to O'Brien transition and now this one. And just as far as interim coaches go, there are some similarities, but there's some major differences. The similarities are Hall of Fame level assistant coaches in Wade Phillips and Romeo Crennel took over. I mean, those guys are geniuses on the defensive side of the ball. They have head coaching experience, and they were successful in spots as head coaches. But after that, the two main differences are the timing and the quarterback in play. And because of both of them, you still had plenty of time to turn things around. You didn't have a lot of time when it happened with Wade because there was only 3 games left. The Texans were 2-11 when that happened. And the quarterbacks at that time were Case Keenum and Matt Schaub. And I think history's kind of shown they're not the elite level. They're obviously not the elite level quarterback that you have now in Deshaun Watson. Matt Schaub's time as a starter really ended that year. And Case was in his first season. So much better situation, and they both give you much more hope. All right, we've got questions from all over. Dylan asks one that you were joking about beforehand, Deepi.
I expected like 4 of these right off the bat. Yeah.
Right, off the bat. Any chance the Texans pick up LeVeon Bell? Running back was cut by the Jets. I'd be mildly surprised if they did pick him up, but you never say never. And hey, perhaps they would bring him in. But if I had to guess, I'm going to say no. I don't think he's going to come here to the Texans.
I mean, we're always never say never is exactly right. But I mean, LeVeon Bell, he's a vested veteran, so he doesn't have to clear waivers as of, I want to say 3 p.m. Central Time. He'll be available to anyone that wants to sign him. But I mean, I just think there's so many injuries at running back throughout the league. I would see one of those teams being sort of desperate to pick him up. Obviously, he was an explosive runner back in 2017. When he was with the Steelers, he was, he had that offensive line. He was just such a great back. And then he went to the Jets and, he never quite regained the numbers and how his performance, how he had with the Steelers. In the last few years, obviously they've had coaching changes and whatnot. So I think there's more than meets the eye to LeVeon Bell. I think that's like an onion. There's a lot of layers to that situation. And I think any team that brings them in has got to do their due diligence. And it's not easy to bring in a free agent. They got to go through all these COVID tests, and you bring somebody in. I remember a few weeks ago with Earl Thomas, they canceled all the workouts because it was just, there was a lot of testing in play, and you're playing the Titans, and you just don't know what's in your building and what's not in your building. So I think you only bring them in unless you're 100% serious. But the Texans don't have injuries at running back. They do need to get their run game going, but does that happen with a new running back, or does that just happen with fixing what you have in front of you? I think that's sort of how this team will evaluate whether or not they sign LeVeon Bell. And I'm with you, Drew. I just don't see it.
Brody from England has a good one. Are Grenard and Blacklock going to get more snaps? Well, Grenard has been active the last 2 weeks. He played 2 snaps on defense last Sunday. So I do think that will rise. I'm not sure that it's going to jump significantly, but yes, I do think you'll see him get eased in more and more. And I do think you're going to see him play a little bit more. And as far as Blacklock goes, he played 10 snaps on defense. So same sort of situation. I think it's going to continue to keep going up and up. But they're 2 guys that the Texans are going to count on this season and in the future. So bottom line, yes, I think it rises, but not by a whole heck of a lot this week coming up, Deepi.
Yeah, you know what Romeo Crennel always says about rookies? Rookies make rookie mistakes. So I think that's something that you definitely are very cognizant of. And if you have to put those guys out there, you will. If you think that gives you the best chance to win, you will. I mean, I think if there's an injury or something, of course, you're going to see more of those guys out there. But I think it'll be a slow ramp up to when we see more of them. And Grenard he was only active for his first game, last week, right?
Right.
Before the Jaguars game. The Vikings game was his first game that he was active for because he'd been banged up and sort of working his way back. So he's got a little bit less of a head start than Blacklock, who's played a little bit more. But I would say, yeah, it'll increase. I mean, don't look for them to be in the starting lineup anytime soon, though.
Speaking of the starting lineup, Thurman asks this: do you think Jacob Martin will start? And Deepi, we had a chance to talk with Jacob Martin along with Mark Vandermeer. You're going to hear that conversation tonight on Texans All Access. So that's going to be a fun time. He's a great guy to speak with, and he's still getting more and more acclimated into the system. He put on 20-some pounds of muscle last offseason. He was one of the guy that defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver pointed to in training camp as somebody to keep your eye on, as somebody that really flashed and flourished during the month of August, had a sack at Kansas City, absolutely smoked Gardner Minshew on Sunday, and really it was a big, big play. So the question is, do you think he will start? We'll see. I think it could definitely happen this season, but he's definitely making it hard to keep him on the sidelines. That's for sure. So Jacob Martin will start maybe sometime soon, maybe not this week though.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see why not. Last year, he says it himself. He was sort of thrown into the fire when the Texans traded for him before the start of the season. And they used him mostly on third downs. And that's definitely changed heading into this year. He has proven that he needs to be on the field in those early down situations too, because there's a lot that he can do. He's good against the run. He's a great pass rusher. So he's making a case for himself. I mean, it would not surprise me if we see him starting. Not at all.
Lane and Alvin has this. Do you think the players are happy with the coaching change? Lane, they're very, very happy with this change. They all love what they've seen so far. It's a breath of fresh air.
And they're winning.
Yes, they are happy with the coaching change. Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Lane. Bethany wants to know, how do you guys feel about the Cooks and Watson combo? I don't want to speak for you, DP, but I feel pretty good. And they looked really good in training camp. At the practices I was out there, they were very smooth. And what we saw Sunday was what I had seen in training camp practice those few times. And Cooks had that good game, and I think it was week 2 or 3. But other than that, he'd been kind of quiet. Well, he really responded last Sunday, had a monstrous game. And that's kind of what we were seeing in these practices back during training camp. And I think it's something we can continue to see going forward, DP.
Yeah. I mean, what's not to love about those deep bombs to Cooks downfield? I mean, we loved it when we saw Will Fuller doing it. We love seeing Cooks do the same thing, especially when he's putting up numbers like he did against Jacksonville, over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. I would definitely want to see more of that. I mean, that's what we had been waiting for since training camp. And it just took a while to sort of get those two going. Romeo Crennel was asked about it. Was that part of the game plan to get Cooks the ball more? And he said, no. He said, I was just trying to get the run game going. But with the run game going, sort of opened up the passing game more. So we got to see what these receivers were able to do, because we had been sort of wondering, like, we saw this great stuff in camp, so why are we not seeing it now? Where's Randall Cobb? Where's Brandon Cooks? What about Will Fuller? Will Fuller was putting up numbers, but it wasn't enough to get the Texans to win. So I think John Harris calls it like whack-a-mole, where, you don't know who's going to have a big game week to week. It's the defense's problem. Like, you stop Cooks one week, maybe it's Cobb. You stop Fuller, maybe it's Cooks, vice versa. Like, there are a lot of weapons. So if you can get them all going on all different cylinders, I don't care who has a big game. I mean, I would love to see them all. I would love to see them all get 100-yard games. It's not going to happen every single week, but I love what we've seen so far from Cooks, and I hope we see more of it.
Deepi, you just made me a little bit sad, because you brought up that great saying by John about whack-a-mole, and I think of Chuck E. Cheese when I think of whack-a-mole, and one of the many, many awful things that have come out of COVID-19 is no more Chuck E. Cheese. So
that's a bad thing?
Yeah, I love Chuck E. Cheese. It's so much fun.
I've hosted a lot of birthday parties at Chuck E. Cheese, and I've been to a lot of birthday parties at Chuck E. Cheese as the mother of 3 boys. I'm okay. I'm okay that they turned our local Chuck E. Cheese into a Torchy's. I'm okay with that.
I love Chuck E. Cheese.
Super happy about that.
R.I.P. Chuck E. Cheese.
But we digress.
Marcus has this. Do you think the Texans are interested in Clay Matthews? They do their due diligence. They're looking at guys all around. They haven't signed anyone at the outside linebacker spot. I suppose that, there might be an interest, and it's nothing to rule out, but I don't see it happening anytime soon, Deepi.
No, I mean, I think they want to get younger and faster. I mean, I'm not saying Clay Matthews isn't young and fast. Wasn't he a teammate of Brian Cushing's at USC?
He was, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So Brian Cushing's been out of the league for a while. I mean, Clay Matthews, I mean, hats off to him for having the career that he's had so far. I just don't see it.
Yep. Tony with an E, so it's Toney, wants to know, what are the keys to winning this week at Tennessee?
Oof.
And there was another person who had, I can't remember their name, but they said, can the Texans beat Tennessee? And absolutely they can win against the Titans. Deshaun Watson's 3-1 against them all time. And the only game Deshaun Watson played against them last year, W for the good guys. They went into Tennessee, took a 14-0 lead, held on, and won that game by 3. And it was a situation where pretty much most of the general public kind of thought, oh, the Texans are tanking now, because they'd lost an ugly, ugly game the week before to the Denver Broncos. But and the Titans were rolling.
Titans were hot.
White hot. And the Texans went in there and bullied them and beat them, and they won when they needed to, because the next time those two teams played was at the very end of the season. So about 3 weeks later, nothing was on the line for the Texans. So they rested Deshaun Watson. They rested Laramie Tunsil. They rested DeAndre Hopkins. And Tennessee won that game, but nobody was playing for the Texans. So the Texans can definitely win this game. It's like Romeo Crennel said, you can't let Derrick Henry get going, because when he gets going, he ragdolls people, like we saw last night with poor Josh Norman. I mean, that was just a mismatch. So you got to find a way to sort of limit what Henry can do. And you got to keep doing what you did last Sunday as far as hitting guys on the intermediate and deep stuff with Will Fuller and Cooks and Stills. Get all of them involved, because that helps open things up for David Johnson to be successful. So, yes, you can absolutely beat these guys. It's a definite possibility. And
don't commit turnovers. I think Buffalo turned the ball over so many times last night. I mean, and Tennessee, first in the league in turnover differential, +8. They've played one less game. That's a little terrifying. So don't turn the ball over. Try to get some takeaways. I think the advantage that the Texans have here is that it's a short week for the Titans. I mean, they geared up for that Tuesday game, and they came out. I was surprised. I thought they would look sluggish. I did not think they would look as sharp as they did. They surprised all of us against a Bills team that everyone thought was really good. So I expect that it's going to be a quick turnaround and a tough turnaround for this Titans team as they try to recover from such a physical game late in the week. They only have a few days to sort of regroup and get ready for the Texans. And the Texans always bring it when they play in Nashville. So I expect no different. Texans are coming off a win, so they know what they need to do. They know it's an important game, back-to-back AFC South games on their schedule. So they just got to get it done the way they did against Jacksonville and don't look back and take advantage of a Titans team that, this may be a fortuitous situation if ever you were going to play the Titans, to play them on a short week like this one.
As Mark Vandermeer would say, they're fat and happy coming off a win. So let's leave it at that. Steve has this. Who will step up in Benardrick McKinney's place? it's a tough loss. I mean, this guy is one of your leaders on defense and has been for the last 5 years, especially played well against the Titans and against a thumper like Derrick Henry. So it's going to be tough to replace him. But what we saw from Terrell Adams on Sunday against the Jaguars was pretty good. He wound up leading the team with 13 tackles, had a TFL. He was around the ball, and he's somebody that's really reliable. From what you've seen from him on special teams when he's played out there, he's been great in that regard. And he brought some of that over to the defensive side of the ball and was excellent. So he's somebody you're looking at. And Deepi, you wrote a little bit more about this yesterday. The Texans also are bringing in a guy from the Raiders who has played linebacker as well. So there are some options, but I think you're going to see mainly Terrell Adams there.
Yeah, Kyle Emanuel, they signed him off the Raiders practice squad. But Tyrell Adams, I mean, we've seen him around the building. He's been on the roster, but to actually see him in game action, you know, he was as impressive as it could be. And Romeo Crennel said as the game went on, he got better. So he recovered that fumble that Whitney was trying to recover. It was a big play that he came up with. And, you know, to be calling the plays back there the way Bernardrick McKinney was, getting the defense lined up, that's a tall task for anybody. Yeah. So you need someone that's familiar with your plays and the defense. So I would imagine it'd be someone in-house that would have to step up for Bernardrick. But didn't you see, it was several players that sort of stepped in to take BMAC's plays. Sometimes you saw Michael Thomas step in there, you know, as a box safety. Sometimes, you know, you saw you saw another inside linebacker. You've got Dylan Cole, obviously. You know, so I think it's not going to be any one guy that takes his place, but certainly the Texans are going to miss losing a guy like that. That's been a leader in your team, a captain for the team. He's been a starter. He's a Pro Bowler, and everyone loves BMAC. I mean, It's just not going to smell like barbecue without him out there.
Now you made me sad 2 times. Okay, you brought up a very, very important point there, a very good point, in that the Texans defense looked different personnel-wise for the combo of McKinney's absence and then the shakeup in the coaching staff. You mentioned Michael Thomas. He's going to get more playing time, it sounds like, from what Romeo Crennel said. You also saw a lot, and I mean a lot, of Lonnie Johnson at deep safety, playing back in that center field spot, which he'd not done too much of this season. Got about 80% of the snaps at safety, and he's now listed as a safety, you know, on the program or the flip chart or whatever. But this is a move that John Harris has talked about for a long time now.
He's just like, yawn. I have been saying this for about a year now. He's been saying it since this offseason. He wants to see Lonnie Johnson at safety.
It makes sense, too, because I mean, think of a lot of great safeties. They started out as cornerbacks. Glover Quin, here on a personal level, Glover Quin was drafted as a corner, played corner for his first 2 years, transitioned to safety, and that's what he played the rest of his career. He played that splendidly. You want to go on up to Hall of Fame level, you know, Ronnie Lott, he played some cornerback as well and was mainly a safety. So you got a guy who's got cornerback speed in Lonnie Johnson, and he's big. He's, you know, big like a prototypical safety. So there's lots of bonuses to that, but it's just tough to teach a young guy a new position on the fly. But looks like that's happening, and it looks like something the Texans are going to continue with. And it's kind of encouraging and kind of fun. So keep your eyes on number 32, Lonnie Johnson Jr. Right,
he likes to be called a defensive back. That's what he said in training camp. So if I get the chance to interview him again, I'm going to ask him, is he okay with being a safety now? I think he likes to show that he's got versatility. And certainly you may see him step back into a cornerback role if the Texans need him there, which we've seen that in years past too. Remember Kareem Jackson? We talked a lot about him moving to safety, but unfortunately with his time here, there were so many injuries. He had to keep stepping back as a corner. But I'm looking forward to seeing Lonnie Johnson flourish at the safety position. No doubt. And it makes you wonder, you brought up Kareem, how good might he have become, or how he was always a good player here, but how much better might he have been if they'd have just made that switch a long time ago in his career, maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago? What might that have brought up? But that's for another time. That's an in the lab discussion that John and I'll bring up. But Deepi, I can't wait. I love playing the Titans. This is always a fun matchup. It's a slugfest. And I know you're going to be pumped for it too. You and I will be doing the pregame show. We'll answer some more questions from fans in the run-up to that game. It's a noon kickoff Central Time in Nashville. We'll be here in the stadium taking your questions, talking with John, talking with Mark on the road. It's going to be an awesome time. So to wrap things up, for Tyler Marcotte, Andrew Temperley, Amanda Caffey, everybody who put this show together, and for Deepi Sidhu, I'm Drew, and we'll see you next time. Go Texans.